So we have this little shoot here sprouting up, and since it's a fresh new sprout, well, there's no other insects really established on this. No predators or other just things that get in the way, things that would deter a monarch female from laying on here. Instead, these sprouts, they tend to be ones that the females prefer. And this is no exception. Got an egg right there. I mean, seriously, you want me to just leave you there? Lawnmower's coming. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But before you're a third instar for sure. So yeah, sorry not sorry. I'm gonna try to get you a better chance. Hi, I'm Rich Lund, just a guy trying to help out the monarch butterflies. And while I am just a guy, I am also a high school science teacher. And I, like other educators, know that right now, 'tis the season. And if I go out and collect any wild-sourced monarch eggs, well, those are going to be something that if I take them in and rear them with proper outdoor rearing that allows them to have the environmental cues so they can still migrate, well, then I'm going to have some monarch butterflies that are going to be able to be brought into the classroom. A thoroughly rewarding, engaging, impressionable educational experience. I reside in Metro Detroit currently, so let's head out there and see what eggs we can find. The egg hunt's not a major focus of this episode, but still, please, indulge me. Come on, let's go. Now, this is a place where I do sometimes source some milkweed food. And you can see that there's plentiful. No lack of milkweed leaves here for me if I need some. And it can sometimes be a good place to find eggs, too. Sometimes. There is a pretty busy road here. This area here, easement. This area is getting mowed. This area over here, not getting mowed. So these plants over here, these are some new shoots from the root system from the plants that got mowed down at the last mow. Check this out. Here's a good teachable moment. Here we have a monarch egg. Right there. Oh, it's hot. So, I don't know when the next mowing schedule is, I don't pretend to, but I do know it's going to take this guy at least 25 at the soonest to 30 days to reach it to adulthood. And the next mow is probably happening before then. In the most recent episode, some of the arguments against rearing were fleshed out. The most prominent ones were brought up and examined. One of them mentioned was the idea of interfering with natural selection. The idea of hands off, nature knows best. It was discussed, but really, there's more to flesh out here. And here I think we got a pretty good teaching example. Now, in nature, which we're out in nature technically, yeah, though there's some context that makes it confusing. Out in nature without human muckery involved, a monarch egg has approximately a 3 to 7% chance of making it all the way to adulthood. It depends upon the region, what kind of predators are there, resources. So we could just quickly round that to 10%, make the math easy. But again, that 3 to 7% range, or even saying 10%, well, that's still a range. And there are certain situations, and this would be one of them I would claim, where the probability of this guy making it is reduced down to near zero. As a responsible science guy, I don't want to claim a 0% chance has been reached, but it's got a lawnmower to face here in a little bit. And here's where now that idea of nature knows best could kind of not apply, kind of be removed. Yes, nature does know best. But when it comes to natural selection and nature selecting, well, nature's not ready for human technology. This monarch egg could have the best genes ever, but the best genes ever are going to do nothing in the face of a lawnmower. Monarch genetics, being put through the gamut of 50 million years or more of natural selection, has developed the most modern-day, best-surviving monarchs. And yet, nothing in that genetic information has prepared them for highways, lawnmowers. So one way I could choose to look at this is, sorry buddy, your mom didn't have the right genes. She didn't know about lawnmowers. Because you don't have that genetic information as to where lawnmowers are going to and not going to mow things down, well, you're not fit for survival any longer, and you don't deserve to be part of the migration. It just doesn't seem quite logical to me. Again, that's one way I could look at it. Now, I'm going to collect this egg, rather than let it face the fate of the lawnmower. As I've done many times, I'm going to make the decision, I'm going to make the choice to try and increase this guy's chances of making it to the adult stage. Increase his chances of becoming part of the monarch migration. I'm choosing to take in the wild egg, responsibly rear it, do it in a controlled environment where it's safe from some of the nasty predators out there. I'll be doing this in an outdoor rearing container so it still gets environmental cues to become part of the migration. Cleanliness and sanitation will be involved at every step. And upon reaching the adult status, if it does, and upon clearing a negative OE test, the adult will be released. I recognize this is not a conservation effort. This choice I'm about to make here, this is a hobby. A hobby that, like any hobby involving animals, involves responsibility, safety, and care. And I also recognize taking in this one, or 10 more like it, is not going to save the monarchs. It's not going to help out the population in the long term. To do that, that truly is the restoration of habitat, the planting of milkweed and nectar-producing flowering plants, native to your area. But I do make the claim, while it won't save the monarchs, what I'm going to do today is going to save this one. And I think that's very important to this individual. Now, I just put this monarch into a container with the intention of rearing it to adulthood. Am I in a cult? I don't know. Let me get home. We'll talk about it. Alright, back at home base. Back to it. Where'd we leave off? Oh yeah, cult. See, I did put a monarch in a container so that way it wouldn't face the mower. And for some people, that's enough to get you that label, cult member. In the Raising Monarchs series, I always try to stay abreast of the current science that's out there. Studies, articles, scientists, both conclusions and opinions. It's ever evolving and changing. It's important to stay up to date. Diverse discussion, new ideas from a lot of different people thinking different ways. Discussion about those ideas. That's what keeps science healthy. For this reason, I've tried to always keep my finger on the pulse as best I can as to what's new and up to date out there. And then also over the years, especially once I joined Instagram, peeps have been sending me articles and different tidbits to look at, asking for my take. In some of these cases, I've already found those articles first and read them. In other cases, this is how I'm introduced to them. In the recent episode, Arguments Against Rearing, I tried to discuss what logical arguments and things that are also approaching logical arguments are out there that object to the idea of home rearing, but even objections to responsible home rearing that involves wild sourcing of eggs, no breeding involved, release within 24 hours of eclosure, OE testing, even objections to that kind. Please check that episode out for a full discussion. Well, shortly after that episode, I was sent something that does fit the caliber of scientific opinion, but was not like anything I had ever really encountered before. A well-established scientist, Dr. Andy Davis, a name that I recognize and respect the work of, was objecting to not just the rearing of monarchs causing harm to monarchs, but also, and here's where I think it does cross a line with the general public, that the rearing of monarchs qualifies you as being in a cult. From Dr. Davis's public blog post, something that he widely encourages for people to share, in the section Raising Monarchs and the People Who Raise Them. It's almost like a cult. That's right, I said it, a cult. It basically acts like one. There are leaders, influencers, and people who blindly follow them, all while closing their eyes and ears to anything that goes against what they are doing. And they attack others who don't share their belief. If that's not a cult, I don't know what is. Dr. Davis then goes on to say, another reason I say it's a cult is because whenever I hear from people who no longer rear monarchs, they all sound the same. They look back on their own lives and are ashamed of what they did. Some of them admit they were even one of the haters, helping to spread the hate to others and the don't listen to scientists message. Others have revealed how they see how science gets purposely suppressed by the monarch rearing groups, so as to keep the followers happy. And then the clincher. By the way, if you are reading this right now and you have monarchs in a container or a hamper, you're in the cult. This is all from the blog he titles The Science of Monarch Butterflies, though I do question how scientific this entry is. Upon reading it, I'm sitting here thinking, this is for me. I'm someone who raises monarchs, and a scientist who I respect just said I was a cult member. Of course, not just me, I wasn't singled out or something, but he labeled everyone rearing monarchs, regardless of rhyme or reason, a member of a cult. All inclusive. If you have monarchs in a container, you are in the cult. That kid who found a caterpillar on his milkweed in his yard and took it in because he wanted to see the transformation actually happen firsthand, learn about it, know more about it, cult member. That little girl who asked her dad one night, hey, have you ever raised any monarch butterflies? It brings up nostalgic memories of childhood for him, and so next day they go out for a walk in the woods and find some eggs. Take them home to share a really valuable experience together that summer. Cult members. The teacher who collects some eggs from a soon-to-be mowed-down highway median and then shares with her students engaging lessons that incorporate in ethical ways the monarchs in the classroom. leaving a lasting impression and inspiring future entomologists and conservationists. Cult member. Yo, a scientist I respect just called my mom, who has used the process of taking care of and rearing monarch caterpillars to help her with her Parkinson's, to help her be able to keep mobility and function. Cult member. And I don't know if Dr. Davis is ever going to see this video, but I must assume and operate as if he will. So I wish to be clear, I have respect for this man very much, as I do any entomologist, any scientist. Those that are published in these fields, or really any field, those are the experts. Me, I'm just a guy trying to help out the monarch butterflies. But yes, I also too am a science teacher, an educator. And from the standpoint of a science teacher, you scientists out there, y'all are in the trenches doing very vital and important work. You are all rock stars to me. But still, again, I'm a science educator, somebody who teaches his students about the responsible ways that science is to engage and communicate their findings to the public. And I must be honest, this crosses a line with me. It's not on some deep alley of the internet either. It's a public blog and is labeled as a scientific one, and Dr. Davis does encourage it to be widely shared. Straight up, I'm not a cult member. My mother is not a cult member. Former students of mine are not cult members. It's a very insulting label to give someone. It's demeaning if you weren't aware, and it also insults actual cult survivors who do exist. As an educator, I was shocked when I saw it. It is the antithesis of what I teach my students to be, the responsible ways that science is to engage with the community and communicate their results. Beyond just labeling anyone rearing monarchs as a cult member, a whole lot of sweeping statements are made generalizing this group of people in some very unscientific ways, some very unfair ones. Closing eyes and ears to anything. Or they attack others who don't share their beliefs. These are some very absolute, generalizing statements about anyone and everyone who rears a monarch butterfly. I've never seen the daughter of one of my coworkers who reared 2 monarchs this summer attack anyone for any reason. But I do see this being claimed in the very same blog post that is attacking people who rear monarchs with the insulting label of cult. But as you stated, that's right, I said it, a cult. You didn't just bring it up once, you reiterated it to make it very clear what your opinion was. And you've asked that this be shared widely. In this same post, you also make reference to your other blog posts. Just push the share button for Pete's sake, even if you haven't read it. Something else as an educator, seeing such a recommendation to pass on information that we haven't taken the time to read, thoroughly mentally digest and understand, and see if we agree with before passing on to others, that's a huge flag on the academic play. I mean, come on, that is like one of the number one ways, if not the number one way, that misinformation is spreading these days. As an educator, I cringe that such a habit is being promoted. So, making it very clear on a public post and asking that it be spread so wide, I do think that you have opened the door for some respectful, reserved critique. And while I don't claim to be a peer review process is something that we should be ready for in science. I also think it's quite fair, as someone who obviously rears monarchs, who raises them, though I don't feel the need to, it's fair if I choose to, defend myself. The burden of evidence is always on the one in science making the claim. And so to claim that I or any other person who rears monarchs is in a cult, well, that evidence would be on the person making the claim, and regardless of if I think they've made a sufficient argument, still, I'll play along. Here's how I will support the claim that people who rear monarchs, or at least this guy here, and those who follow suit with what I do, that we are not members of a cult. It was stated on your blog that in the raising of monarchs and the people who raise them, that there are leaders and influencers. Already, that is not a cult. To fit the definition of a cult, you have one authority. From just one authority does the information, does the truth flow. Outside opinion is not taken in and considered. Now, I can't speak for all who rear monarchs, but from my perspective. I began with monarchwatch.org and still do follow their information. I do also these days consult plenty from Monarch Joint Venture and try to keep up to date with them, who do actively discourage the informal rearing by hobbyists and instead think that it's more preferred for academic reasons. So they do still seem to maybe not actively endorse or promote, but they do still support teachers who wish to rear them in the classroom. Monarchs can be an important educational tool to teach and inspire students to be more active in conservation efforts. For classroom-based activities, we recommend limiting the number raised, capturing classroom specimens from the wild only, and then go on to tell you where you can submit your reared data. I also consult Xerces Society, who do have an article with a very clear message, very clear headline. Keep monarchs wild. Why captive rearing isn't the way to help monarchs. But after warning of the many different risks, and doing a very thorough job of warning them, they do still provide 8 tips on how to rear monarchs if you choose to do so. Seems they recognize people are going to do it, and perhaps it's better to give them some guidance rather than just have them stab at it in the dark. At least then, they know how to do it responsibly. And they also have a section on the benefits of rearing monarchs in the classroom. And then back to Monarch Watch, well, these days they still do have a section on how to responsibly rear monarchs, be it at home or in the classroom. They have step-by-step instructions, and then they also do supply educators with classroom rearing kits. Now, those are already 3 different sources that say some slightly different things, and in some cases have some very common threads. But already that would be 3 authorities, not 1. But I'll go further. In 2019, when the study Contemporary Loss of Migration in Monarch Butterflies came out, due to the new and conclusive evidence that it presented, I adjusted my rearing practices to include outdoor rearing for any monarch eggs that are taken in after August 1st. That way any late season migratory monarchs still get those environmental cues and can be part of the migration. So with 3 sources already telling me some things, from a brand new source, I took in some new information and adjusted and refined my practices. Not very cult-like, but also in the reading through of that 2019 article, back when I changed my practices, that paper that Dr. Davis, you sometimes have cited to help support your feelings about rearing, and thus I know you've read it. It also states, in terms of seasonal rearing by summer hobbyists and school groups, we would argue that the practice of raising monarchs in this setting is net positive. That we is 4 different scientific authors on this paper, 4 different experts. And I'm not saying in science that we play a numbers game like that. It only takes one patent clerk to be right about something and everybody else then to be wrong about it. But here is 2 things that I think I have clearly demonstrated. The people who raise monarchs, they have multiple sources, authoritative sources that they can consult. And they should. And if anybody's watching my videos and taking my advice, they are consulting these multiple different authorities. That's always been encouraged. That's something I've been demonstrating. Anybody who's doing that responsible rearing, which I would say that is a part of too, is not in a cult. Accepting in information from multiple different sources that aren't always saying the exact same thing, that's responsible, and that is not a cult. The second thing I think I've made clear is that where the stance is on the rearing of monarchs, home rearing of it, that there is not a scientific consensus on this. There's definitely some different opinions about it, some being completely hands-off, others discouraging it, yet saying it's still okay for classrooms and academic reasons. Others almost saying that same thing, but also still showing, hey, here are the responsible steps. And then other sources that are not only giving you the steps for how you could do it at home if you wished, but then also supplying kits to teachers. Some are more towards the hands-off, others are more towards seeing it as a very educational, beneficial experience. And again, there's common parallels through all 3 of them. There's differences amongst all 3. It's not uniform. There's no exact scientific consensus. Now, there's definitely some common ground, points that I think we very much agree with. I also don't think that people should be rearing in the hundreds, that should be the goal. If they choose to do the hobby, quality over quantity. And I very much urge, and always have throughout everything I've done, so I hope others who raise monarchs are too, that it's not a conservation effort. It's not saving the population. The conservation effort would be truly in the restoration of habitat, the planting of milkweed and nectar-producing flowering plants that are native to your area. But after that, this is a hobby that can be done responsibly. After all, scientists in the lab do so, and they don't get a special feature that citizens don't have. Science belongs to everyone. It's not something that's just for the elite, just for the aristocrats out there like back in the 1700s. It's a democratic endeavor, and it's something that citizens can and will participate in, whether you wish for them or I wish for them to or not. But to claim that your conclusions are being dismissed or ignored by hobbyists, when there are multiple other experts that are saying different things than what you are, that's unfair. If there isn't a scientific consensus out there, it's your choice, sir, You can be frustrated with hobbyists and call them cult members on blogs, or you can recognize that not all experts agree with you 100%. Your conclusions have not reached that level or status yet. They might. Keep going. But it's not currently there yet. And coaching blog readers to consider those who do raise monarchs to be cult members and treat us that way, that isn't the path to getting it there either. I'm not a cult member, my mom's not a cult member, and I don't think the conservationists over at Monarch Watch supplying teachers with rearing kits are cult members either. Be willing to put in the work and convince your peers, rather than attacking the low-hanging fruit of non-expert hobbyists. Now, to show respect, I did do what deep dive I could. I tried to find what studies I could, some I had seen before, of what kind of harm rearing might potentially be doing to monarch butterflies. Now, admittedly, perhaps I missed one, and I'm certainly welcome to take a look at which ones show up in the comments section. And of course, Dr. Davis, I did go to your blog to see what kind of arguments you were making and what studies you were using to support those arguments. Again, to do it as respect. And the studies that I was seeing being referenced, they all had pretty much three things in common, amongst others. First, wild groups were compared to one or more reared groups of monarch butterflies. Second, some form of measurable fitness was determined and data was collected on it. And third, averages were involved of the groups. All of this makes sense. Yeah, I'd want to compare what's going on in the wild to what's going on with reared monarchs too. Certainly you need measurable criteria that reflects an indication of fitness, and I think things chosen that are chosen in a lot of these studies, yeah, it reflects it well. And certainly if you're doing anything with groups and quantitative data, you do want to use averages so you can see trends. This is all proper science being done, but still it's three important things to notice. For example, in the 2020 study, Dr. Davis, you're one of the authors of, a poor substitute for the real thing. Captive reared monarch butterflies are weaker, paler, and have less elongated wings than wild migrants. This study, like many others out there, this is valuable. It collects data and helps us find out and learn about something we didn't truly know before. We didn't have evidence for. But its setup involves a group of wild monarchs that's compared to then two different groups of reared monarchs. A measurable way, actually a number of different measurable ways are defined as far as data that can be collected that reflects the fitness of the monarch butterflies. In the case of this study, wing size and shape, color, and grip strength were the indicators of fitness. Then, the wild monarchs were measured and tested, data was collected, and the reared monarch groups were measured and data was collected. And once the data was then collected and analyzed, well, yep, wouldn't you know it, the wild monarchs, they showed on average better fitness than either of the averages for the reared groups. But as already discussed in the previous episode, arguments against rearing, that's not really that surprising. This is precisely what we'd expect when we're comparing a wild group of monarchs, essentially like NBA all-star players who have passed several different trials of fitness to get to where they're at, compared to a team of new recruits from the neighborhood, which, yeah, might have a LeBron in there, but those new recruits being freshly eclosed monarchs from a rearing group. This experiment, like many that are set up this way, have built within them an unavoidable bias. A bias that is in favor for the wild group to be showing up as more fit. A wild group in a study like this, well, it's filled with only all-star champions. It doesn't include any of the non-survivors that didn't make it, obviously. A reality of the experimental design, and for the most part an unavoidable one, but still one to at least acknowledge and deal with. And in the paper, well, this idea, it is brought up in the conclusion, but it's discussed only as the results, not so much an inherent bias that's in the design of the experiment, which it really should be, particularly because of the conclusions being drawn. Of course, wild monarchs are going to be fitter than any reared group. The group of wild monarchs is already pre-sorted to only include the fittest. So any study that's really constructed this way and hasn't accounted for this bias, it does have this bias included in it. Again, they are still important ones because we can sometimes find surprises, but for the most part, yeah, they're not really that groundbreaking. Another study could be done that's set up the same kind of way that maybe finds 25 more different chosen laboratory indicators of fitness, and I'm still not going to be at all surprised when all 25 of them turn out to be better for the wild group. So maybe it's not that this kind of work is being dismissed or ignored. Another potential possibility is that this work is being read and understood. It's just also being given the weight it deserves. Now, to the cultists out there. I jest, of course. In all seriousness, what are you to do in the middle of all this? First, Consult multiple sources. Find ones that agree. Find ones that disagree with each other. Find all the nuances and different ways that they agree and disagree with each other. Take it all in, and then, just as I've always recommended, make the most appropriate, informed decision that's best for you. Notice how uncult-like that sounds? Second, try your best to not ever just pass on information about this topic or really any other one, unless you've done what is academically responsible and you've gone through that information, read through it, understand it, you've vetted it. You understand what it says, and then when you're passing it on, you're at least promoting something that you know what was there. Otherwise, this is exactly how misinformation spreads quite easily on the internet. Please, read through these ideas that we're passing on, or you might be calling somebody a cult member and not know it. And then third, another way to really kind of avoid all of this mess and take less heat from anybody who thinks you might be a cultist is to adopt the idea of rescue rearing. If you do enjoy this hobby and you're responsible with it and you want to continue it, well, one way to avoid a lot of this heat is to just choose to always source your eggs from doomed milkweed situations. Areas where you have a strong certainty that the Monarch's chances of surviving there have reduced to zero. A parking lot milkweed where there's only one stalk. Milkweed in a public area that you know is going to soon be sprayed with pesticides to control some other invasive insect that's out there this summer. Or like I showed in this episode, monarchs that you know are going to be in the path of a lawnmower soon. If you choose to adopt that into your practice of always sourcing your eggs and caterpillars from only these doomed situations, well then the majority, if not all of this debate, goes down to a whisper. Monarchs and their millions of years of genetics are ready for many, many things, but nothing in that genetic code has prepared them for a gene that gives them an asphalt deterrent so they don't lay eggs near parking lots. Nothing has given them a calendar sense of when chemical sprays are going to be, and no lawnmower gene out there exists. Such situations, though, are not interfering with natural selection. They are playing defense against human-caused, thus unnatural, hazards. Someone claiming that taking in an egg that you know is about to be mowed, taking that monarch home and letting it have a chance to show that it's fit in the trials of nature, especially what's known as the migration, that could be harming the population, well, that's a pretty tough argument to build at that point. So if you do want to avoid the controversy, that's a pretty safe and beneficial way to go. Alright, I'm Rich Lund. Thank you for checking this episode out with me. Now, I don't think you're in a cult, and actually, when I think about it, I can only find one source, one authority, that's calling you that. Just one. Think about that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I do have a bit of a ritual to perform. And I thank you, as always, for your interest in the monarch butterfly's conservation. See you further down the road. Yes, nothing, yeah, no, but next, yes, not.